Ponytails. Read by Scribbler.
Good luck on your graduation test, son. I'm sure you'll do fine. Your dad and I'll be waiting for when you get home.
The revelation came to me rather spontaneously. A second ago, I'd been smiling at the ceiling, musing that I was one very lucky pony. I was alive, for starters. I was alive and not down in the gloomy depths of a rainbow factory, shivering with fear and cold, pressed against panicked fillies and colts as I choked on the gloom and oppressive misery that seemed to hang about its perimeter around the clock. But at what cost? It was that notion, a simple, self-challenging question which had brought about my suddenly feeling of insecurity. I didn't usually ask myself questions like that. It was safer not to think that way. Better just to count your blessings and remind yourself you were serving a greater cause, and to think about something else. That was what I did. Except that this time, I couldn't. My mind kept circling back to this single, simple question. At what cost? Deeply perturbed, I let my mind wander, searching for something I could use in defense of my reasoning. I was lucky. I was one of the fortunate ones. I had made it. I was better off than the ponies who failed the test and came here to the Rainbow Factory. The Rainbow Factory. The test. Flight school. Flunking out. I still remember when I stepped hoof into the ominous basement of the Rainbow Factory for the first time. It was dark down there, and I had been lost to something far past fear. I'd been petrified. Around me, like dumb cattle, my fellow flunkouts were herded from the cramped hallway and out underneath the large domed roof. The metallic tinge of blood, heated sweat, and bitter fear all came together at once to lace the still air. Distant screams echoed off the concave roof, mixing with whimpers from my classmates and the industrial noises surrounding us. I'd never known any place in all of Equestria with so many huge machines like this. The first thing I noticed was the biggest machine, cylindrical at the bottom but then tapering off far above my head. The stout top was surrounded by a gangplank that circled the machine once and then divided in different directions. We were assembled so that we could look up the side of the contraption, up to the circular gangplank.
Quiet!
For a single moment, there had been silence, or more so an absence of voices as even our panicked whispers died. Only the loud clang of hooves on metal could be heard growing closer above us. We didn't know why we were there. None of us understood what was going on. And then, she appeared.
Shut up! All of you!
At the time, I had no clue of the gender of the trim Pegasus above in a full body suit and hood. I just got a sense of presence, as if this pony's importance was a smell in the room. For a few seconds, the Pegasus and the gangplank looked amidst the audience. She then had spoken. Her voice was rough and authoritative, but vigorous with youth. She had given us a lecture on how worthless we were, the lowest of the low, the failures, verbally beating us down like we didn't already hate ourselves or failing the test. I remember more than one Coulter filly literally falling to their knees in tears of fear and shame. The moment she pulled back her hood, I felt like my eyes were going to fall out of my head when I saw the cyan face, the flowing rainbow mane, the determined pink eyes. A single thought raced through my mind.
Is that Rainbow Dash?
Rainbow Dash, the record breaker. Rainbow Dash, the loved one. Rainbow Dash, the head of the weather team. The pony who encouraged everyone to do their best and be everything that they could be and never give up. She was the one telling us we were worthless and should be ashamed that we were even born. It just didn't make sense. What was going on?
As flyers, you're all useless. You couldn't pass the exam and our flock has no use for weaklings who will only make us less than we should be. But you can serve another purpose. You can help us fulfill the destiny that Princess Celestia herself gave the Pegasi a millennia ago, and help us to make rainbows here in the Rainbow Factory!
It was when she kindly treated us with a demonstration of why we were here that my confusion gave way to the sort of fear one might feel when they were alone in the ever-free forest, surrounded by flickering shadows and noises, chilled to the bone and with monsters getting closer in the underbrush. I clearly remember the mood of the crowd shifting deeper into panic as one of our numbers was separated off and dragged away, struggling by a pair of hooded guards.
What's going on? What are you doing? Let me go! Please! I didn't do anything! I'll take the test again! I'll do better! I'll pass this time, I swear! No! Get off me! Please! Some pony, help!
Spectra is pure essence of color. We Pegasi were charged by Princess Celestia to look after the weather of Equestria. But making rainbows requires Spectra, the purest essence of color. And you can't separate pure color from what holds it. So instead, you have to get at it another way.
We were penned in by further guards as the colt was tied up with a set of chains that had descended from a pulley system above the machine. It was total panic, and we had to get out. But where could we run? Where could we hide? The hallway behind us had already been excluded from the chamber by a set of sturdy wooden doors, and even if we could get out, we didn't even know how we had gotten here. We may just fly around in circles until we were caught and brought back. I remember having to sit there, frozen in panic and despair, as that orange colt was pulled up to the sky, given one last chance at being off the ground. For a moment, he had stayed suspended over the machine, wings fluttering in a manner that projected his burning desire to get away. He'd been struggling terribly, screaming for help, screaming at whatever he saw at the top of the structure. It was the darkest minute of my life up to that point, and the longest. My jaw had gone slack, and my heart began beating as fast as that Pegasi's wings.
I could fly up there. I have wings. I could go up and pull them free.
I had buried the thought. It was something I got very, very good at as time went on.
Ponies are full of Spectra. They're the best source in all of Equestria. But who would ever sacrifice ponies' lives for rainbows? No one would. Not that is, unless the ponies in question have no other function to serve. Not if those ponies are failures. Too useless to pass a simple flying exam to prove their worth to the flock. Pegasi are in charge of the weather, so unicorns and earth ponies have no place contributing to our sacred duty. But if there are Pegasi who are better off dead than alive, well then, who better to use for Spectra? So the best Pegasi engineers invented this machine to extract Spectra, but they found it gives best results when the ponies they extract it from are full of life. Colors are always so much more vibrant than when we use corpses.
And then, it happened. The thing that both scarred me beyond repair and filled me with something stronger than hate. The chains began to pull their captive in all directions, splaying his 4 hoofs and both wings apart. We could see his joints straining as his limbs were locked into unnatural positions.
We find the machine works better if the Pegasi's wings and ribs are broken first, so they can't wreck the process by trying to get away.
Sweet Celestia is hurt.
The chains began to twist, as if attempting to wring out the colt like a piece of wet laundry. Quickly, his hollers of panic turned into screeches of suffering as pain washed over him. His shoulder erupted in blood and bone. The chain had all but torn the leg right off. A loud cracking noise signaled his breaking ribs, leaving him looking very similar to a bloody, dripping ragdoll. His eyes stared in agonized helplessness as, with a hiss, the clamps around his hooves opened. He fell into the top of the machine, where his convulsing body was ground down into a bloody pulp. I was relieved when the screaming finally stopped. A humming had started up in the body of the machine, the turning of gears, the occasional puff of steam. My attention had been drawn down to the tube off to the side, filling with orange, viscous liquid. It accompanied 6 others: red, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, the colors of the rainbow. After a while, and to our collective horror, 3 of the 7 tubes began to vibrate profusely. Then gradually, a flow of according colors was spewed out into a dozen medium-sized vats. When the vats were full, a group of younger Pegasi, about my age at the time, shuffled out from the shadows and took them away. What came after the demonstration was nothing short of a panic. The audience erupted, some flying into the air, others just straight out galloping for escape, all looking for an exit, all failing at the end. Soon the riot had been returned to order. Broken. Hollow.
Welcome to the Rainbow Factory, failures!
I think it was about that time when I realized that there was no glimpse of hope left for me. There was no hope left for any of us. I rolled over in my bed. My head was buzzing again, and my downy mattress had acted like a sponge. I was wallowing in my own sweat. The origins of my experience in the Rainbow Factory were nothing to be happy about. That period of time had really bucked me in the head. I gazed dully at the papers up on the wall of my bedroom. The tally chart. The statistics page. It all came to me in high resolution. Death had changed for me since that day when I first encountered it. It had become a statistic, something to be tallied and occasionally bragged about when you hit or exceed your targets. 74. That's how many lives I had ended by the evening I started asking myself stupid questions. The blood stains would no longer wash from my hooves no matter how hard I scrubbed. Or maybe that had been the case right from the first life I took. I had felt worse the first time, to be sure. It was easier to keep telling myself how good I had it, and thank the skies I wasn't number 75. Somehow, it had happened. I didn't die when all the odds were stacked against me. For weeks after my initial arrival to the Rainbow Factory, I was not picked to be drained. My jobs were many and gruesome. They put us all to work. Not every pony could cope with cleaning up the excess blood that would overspill as the machines ground up its victims. That meant transporting the filled spectra vats to the holding chambers. Worse was cleaning out the grate where the excess body parts that didn't get completely pulped collected. remember once finding a pale purple hoof that ended in a protruding mess of meat and dirt-encrusted gore, and realizing it was a filly I had kissed. I recognized a small birthmark on the bottom of her hoof. She had put that hoof against my cheek and wished me good luck when we were in the line to take our final flight school test. And now I was picking what remained of her from a sewer grate. I threw up until my insides hurt, then wiped my mouth, took a breath, and cleaned up my vomit along with everything else. I told myself I was the lucky one. It hadn't been her finding my hoof after I got fed into the machine. When I wasn't on the floor working, I was in the holding chamber with every pony else. Ironically enough, it was because my containment in those filthy cells that I eventually ended up gaining my freedom. Let me explain. Though I've never been told, I imagine the reason why I ended up being drafted into the permanent working force at the factory was due to how aggressively dedicated I was to survival, amplified 100 times over due to the living environment. At first I fought only to defend myself and the food I was eating. They shoved meals in bowls, one for each pony in the cells, but frequently there were fights over food. Bigger colts and fillies shoved aside smaller ones, or those who had been injured during the final exam. I let myself be pushed aside for less than a week before I started fighting back. I wanted to live. I didn't want to die.
It's every pony for themselves. You can choose starvation if you prefer that.
Please! This is so wrong! We can't let them do this to us! We're better than them! No! Stop, please!
I told you to shut up!
I never went without food. I wasn't the biggest pony in there, but the others learned to be wary when I came near at feeding time. But then I began to fight for the sake of fighting. I found that the longer I remained in the damn building, the angrier I got. Unable to take my rage out on the ponies who were keeping me there, the pressure just kept building up until one dreary day. I blew up at a younger mare who shared my cell. I had lost practically all my friends then, whether to the machines or because they have become frightened of what I have become. Any pony who says they'd remain calm and level-headed in that kind of situation is talking a load of bull. You don't know until you've lived it. I never would have thought I would be the kind of pony to do what I did. Not until I did it. I had started my slow change into a monster. I started finding comfort in harming others. It broke the frustration inside me and gave me relief from the buzzing, screaming tension in my head. At first it was minor fights. Throw 2 good kicks, maybe a punch or 2, and then we both call it a night and retreat to lick our wounds. However, then it turned into something more along the lines of brawling. I'd approach the weaker colts and fillies and beat them up without provocation, or I'd stoke up fights with bigger ponies so they'd let rip at me and I'd be justified in making them eat their own teeth. Making others suffer dulled my own misery. The ones who tried to flee, I wouldn't let escape until they were bloody and begging. I just kept upping the ante, raising the stakes higher and higher, until the one day I did the unthinkable and killed a pony. It was my first murder. I clearly remember how the fight went. I was working with another Pegasus on the factory floor, our wings tightly bound to our sides, moving some freshly squeezed batches of Spectre to the holding chambers. She had slipped on something, spilling the vat of indigo. I tried to save it, but it just slopped all over me, marking me as responsible for the spillage too, even though it wasn't my fault. The commotion would have definitely put me in the next line for the Pegasus device. The fact that after all this time I'd been killed because of a stupid mistake from some pony else drove me rabid with anger.
Do you realize what you've done?
I'm sorry.
The weeks and weeks of my emotional suppression came out in one explosive event. As the filly got up to say sorry, I hoofed her across the face. She flipped backwards, landing with a sickening crunch on her left wing. Her screams for mercy fell dead on my ears as I began pummeling her. I used both of my rear hooves and my front ones to hit her repeatedly. She didn't even try to fight back. Instead, she kept flapping her forelegs at me ineffectively. At one point, a shrill screeching made me stop. It sounded very much like the noise that Orange Colt had uttered as he was being run out all those weeks ago. As quickly as anger had come over me, despair washed through me, sweeping aside my rage with the realization of what I had just done, what I had been doing each time I started a fight. I was no better than the Pegasi factory workers who were keeping us here. Shocked and appalled, I fell to the floor. I'd seen the guards beginning to surround the two of us in a tight circle, and covered my head, waiting for it. I wondered who'd fetch my leftover body parts from the grate. But death didn't come. As the minutes passed, I drew together enough courage to look up from the ground to the assembled Pegasi. The Overmare's vibrant eyes glazed back at me. I felt my heart contract as a cold fear settled in.
Get up!
Shakily, I stood up, willing my hooves to support my teetering body, which was covered now in bloody indigo. In Rainbow Dash's presence, I felt small and insignificant.
What are you going to do with me?
She responded with an answer I had not expected.
Kill her!
She inclined her head at the sobbing filly on the floor, but kept looking at me in the eyes. I looked back, willing myself to maintain the gaze. Her glittering eyes were stunningly beautiful. They reminded me immediately of the roses that grew up on my family's cabin, which I would pick each year on Mother's Day and put in a piece of pottery I'd made in secret. Before all this, I'd nursed dreams of being a potter someday. Maybe after I retired from the weather team with a nice fat pension and some nice fat grand foals. Her eyes' beauty, however, was confined only to those rings around her pupils. The rest of her eyes were being eaten away by madness. They were bloodshot and burning with something I couldn't quite determine. I was so tired, so confused, and so afraid that I could only yank up words from my memory to see if one fit. Curiosity, maybe? Pride? Expectation? Stress? Humor?
Look into her eyes. Look and see the fear as you snuff out her worthless life. Do it now and prove to me you're worth my decision.
Decision? What decision?
She smiled secretly and then motioned with her chin at the sobbing filly.
Do it now!
She gave me the taser that previously clipped her leg.
Use this, or can't you take orders? I don't have much use for ponies who can't take orders. They're only useful for Spectrum.
I grabbed the device and switched it on the way I'd watched the guards do. It came to life with sparkling blue energy. The sobbing filly scrambled to get away from me, but I put one forehoof on her chest and sat astride her, using my greater weight to keep her in place. She struggled, eyes glued to the sparkling taser.
She shouldn't have gambled with your life by being so clumsy. Didn't she know what was at stake? You did, though. That's why you got angry. You were willing to punish her for her mistake. Pin her down!
No.
Put it in her mouth. It's the closest way to her brain.
All my attention had shifted onto the heaving Pegasus beneath me. I didn't say sorry. I was beyond sorry at that point. I could tell this was a test. I was not about to fail another one. I stared into her eyes, willing myself to feel nothing. And there, surrounded by masked figures, I prized her mouth open, shoved the taser down her throat, and pressed the button to end her life in a haze of smoking flesh and the crack of an exploding skull spewing out cooked brain matter.
That was Awoken Part 1. It was written by Synergy, with additional material written by Scribbler, and featuring the voice talents of Finish Line as the narrator, Chaotic 7 as the Orange Colt, Katebug as Purple Bit, Astro Brony as the Bully, Rebon-chan as Rainbow Dash, Lachlan O'Neill as Scootaloo, and with additional voices provided by Ilya Leonov, Solar Pony, Reverb Brony, Quill and Lead, Len Ray, and Scribbler. Okay, thank you very much for listening. It's done. It's finally here. It's taken a while for this week's reading to come out because by Sunday night I actually did a massive recording session on Saturday night into Sunday that started at 8 PM and ended at 5 AM, where I did the majority of this editing. And then it's been tweaked since then. There have been various other different things sort of getting in the way, not least of which is my habit of falling asleep when I should, in fact, be doing some editing or... Well, in fact, while I was just booting up Audacity, just now, I have, in fact, been asleep for an hour because I'm good at this, apparently. I am good at falling asleep when I should be doing work on fan projects. This is not a good thing. This is not a good prospect for the future. I'm screwed. Moving on. Right, yes, Awoken. This is the first part of 5, which all 5 all 5 parts are for the month of Macabre, or as Goody Serenade keeps calling it, the month of Macabre. This is my magnum corpus. So, yes, this is officially the darkest thing I have ever edited. Ever. This way eclipses the cough. This way eclipses, the other dark things I've done. Puppet 2 Have Fame is probably the darkest thing beyond this. Forever Faithful. I've done some dark things before. Trust me. The 5 parts of Awoken, yeah, totally blow those things out of the water. Yeah, I've given myself a bit of a writing credit on this one. And before people sort of blow up at me for this one, because I wrestled with myself for quite some time, and with my conscience, about adding myself to the writing credit for this, because the original story is by Synergy. And when I came to adapt Awoken for audio, I found that the original version of Awoken didn't really work as well as it should have for an audio production. So I started tweaking it, and I started changing a few things, and then I started adding things in. And, yeah, I've added 6,000 words to this around about by the close. So giving myself a co-writer's credit was... Awoken has been read by other people before, and anybody who's vaguely familiar with this one will have known straight away, when they listen to it, that it was not exactly like the other ones. That is because I wanted this to be the best audio production it could be, and as it stood, it didn't work as well for an audio production as I wanted it to. So that's why this version is only available here on my channel. It's because it is the one that I've partially written. I feel like an arrogant sod, now I'm going to move on. So, right, yes, Month of Macabre. There are going to be 4 comic dubs. Oh, I hope, at least 4 comic dubs coming out this month as well, one of which has already come out. That was Tuber and Olfo. And there are going to be 3 others, one of which is giving me a bit of jip, because it is quite long. 8 pages, which, yeah, usually a comic dub is like 3 panels. I'm doing one of 8 pages, and each page has like 6 or 7 panels on it. And I'm doing that in addition to Awoken. I have a mental imbalance in my brain. Each year I try to make October special in some way, shape or form. This year, because Month of Macabre has taken off in ways that I never expected it to, I've wanted to push the envelope a bit more. Hence, I'm doing a 5-parter instead of my usual trick of just doing 5 dark fics, which is what I did last year. And instead, this time I'm having 5 parts of the one story, which if anybody's been on my channel for a while knows this is not typical. I usually don't have continuation stories. Especially not so close after a previous chaptered story, because Whom the Princesses Would Destroy only came out in August, and usually it's about a year in between chaptered stories. Especially since, there might be another one in the works before the end of the year. So I hope that, I hope people enjoyed it. I enjoyed editing this one, actually. Despite the fact that it gave me jip and I kept going back and changing things, it provided a challenge. Put it that way. And I like a good challenge when it comes to editing. Though, to be honest, this production would not be nearly as good as it is without Finish Line. Finish Line is actually from Spectra Studios, who are producing the Rainbow Factory animated movie. And he agreed to voice this narrator in Awoken at the last minute. He's managed to record all 5 parts of this extended version of Awoken in under 2 weeks, and that is including in real life having some issues at work that were very demanding of his time, and I think everybody will agree that he did a phenomenal job here. Everybody did, but as narrator he did have the lion's share of the work to do, and he pulled it off amazingly, so yay. Well done to everybody, especially and especially Felici, because I apparently am special and cannot talk today. This week I have, in fact, received some fan art, which continues to flabbergast me beyond reason whenever this happens. And so, I would like to say a huge thank you to Skyrina. Skyrina is one of my favourite artists. Like, no joke. When I'm looking for just pretty pictures to use as my background or as just inspiration to write things, Skyrina is one of the people that I go to their DeviantArt and look at it and and then randomly Skyrina did some fan art of me and my pony Sona, and here it is. And I just about fell out of my chair when I saw this comment and this link and then this picture. This is one of your heroes, realizing that you are more than just a bug on the wall watching them. This is wow. Thank you so much, Skyrina. I love it. It is gorgeous. And then we also have Evil Scribbler by Purple Black Kiwi, who has done this quite sinister looking version of my pony Sona with slightly, I think they're cat eyes? Red cat eyes that are glowing, and don't look at her for too long. She'll steal your soul. Steal your soul on vocal cords. Thank you very much, Purple Black Kiwi. It's amazing. And then finally we have Running From Myself by Nick Stephen. Now, Running From Myself was actually, it was the first story that I did for Anti-Bullying Week 2 years ago. Anti-Bullying Week happens in November, and it's becoming a bit of a tradition for me to do a special fic in honour of that event. And this one is an illustration of 2 scenes from that fic. And for a pencil drawing, this is actually really, really accurate. I love the way that the fire is drawn to be consuming the tree. So thank you very much, Nick Stephen. It's full of emotion, which is really impressive for a pencil sketch. Thank you very much. Okay, right. I'm going to have to cut things a little bit short now because since this first chapter of Awoken came out so late, and I need to go work on the second one, which should be out hopefully either at the weekend or next Monday. If I have anything to do with it, it will be, yes, we are going to do this. We are going to get this done on time and not be late like a sod. Arg. But before I go, I need to say thank you to my patrons. So big thanks to Dawn Holland, Quill and Lead, Red Tiger, Griffin Productions, Limey Pony, Ian Jensen, Shining Tevos Star, Marcus, Stephen Knight, The One Ryu, Mystic Mystery, Andrew, Xena, Norman, Mad Curse, yes, I got your message, I'm writing it. God help me, I'm writing it. Starlight Stream, Ask Nightmare Luna, Ilya Leonov, Houston Russell, Warrior of Virtue, Peregrine Caged, Greg F., Ed Arthur, and Sturdy Solus. Thank you very much, everybody. You allow me to have the peace of mind, Wizuki, to be able to do these readings, so thank you so much. And with that, I must love you and leave you, because as you can probably hear, I'm using the internal mic at the moment, because I fell asleep like an idiot, and so it is now 1:20 in the morning, and I haven't done my planning for tomorrow, so, yes, going to render this, put it online, haha, so, be lovely to each other, and, good night, everybody!
Going to die, my friend. You're going to be ground up into rainbows. And I'm going to feel nothing but pure ecstasy when you do.